Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give podcast, episode number 26. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today we're very lucky to have Brigit Esselmomt from Biddy Tarot. Brigit started in commerce and actually was a consultant at ANZ and had a very successful career, but she had a little hobby on the side called tarot cards. And then in 2009, she heard Tim Ferriss's audio book, The 4 Hour Week, and everything changed. She started coding her own site, and from there she's left her stable career, started a fantastic business, and now employs 13 people and lives a great lifestyle up there in Queensland. So it's a wonderful episode and you'll really enjoy it. So what's been happening in the BLG world? We continue to grow our subscriptions, which is fantastic. And you can find out more at buildlivegive.com. And you can also check out our free Facebook group at Build Live Give. Also, 5-star reviews. We've had plenty of them. Please keep them coming. We love those 5-star reviews. So why don't you grab your pens and paper at the ready, and now I'll hand it over to Brigit. But before we dive into today's show, leaving corporate to run your own business can be extremely hard and lonely. You start off in a euphoric state, and at some point you look at your cash flow and start to doubt your abilities. What you learn in corporate doesn't always translate, and you are bombarded every day with new challenges. Learning something yourself is okay, but it can be both timely and costly. Friends and family want to help, but they don't have the specific experiences you need. This is why we created the Build, Live, Give community, a free community with hundreds of people just like you, answering questions and sharing real experiences, and definitely no spam. This, coupled with weekly interviews on hot topics, will help you expedite success. Search for the Build, Live, Give group in Facebook and answer the 3 questions to gain access. Anyway, enough from me. Now it's time to hand you over to one of the BLG members to hear their wonderful journey. I'd like to welcome Brigit Esselmomt from Biddy Tarot to the Build, Live, Give podcast. So today we're going to find out a lot about your story, Brigit, but what I'd love you to do is just give a bit of a backstory, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for having me, Paul. I appreciate it. So obviously my business is Biddy Tarot. So I do read tarot and I teach tarot. So back when I was a teenager, I came across the tarot cards. I had a reading. I was quite fascinated by it. And I started teaching myself how to read tarot cards. And at that time, I was starting to move into university. I was studying a commerce degree. And so I needed something a little bit more creative and more free-flowing instead of accounting 101 to kind of keep me interested and excited. So I always had tarot reading as a hobby while I was studying at university. And then as I moved into my career, which was in management consulting and human resources. So I actually started my website back in 1999. And again, because I was studying and I needed a distraction, I learned how to hand code my website. So I learned HTML and I would open up Notepad and I'd type in, my little HTML tags, and suddenly I'd have this website that was being built. And I used the website to start tracking what I was learning as I was learning to read tarot. So I had tarot card meanings and descriptions of how do you go about reading the cards and so on. And again, this is all hobby stuff right at the time, and I had no idea what would happen with it. If we fast forward to about 2009, I came across Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, which I'm sure many of us have discovered and have just gone, whoa, okay, I see. So for me, it was kind of like this golden door opening, and I thought, oh, wow, there's a lot of possibility here. And so what I did with the hobby of tarot reading was I thought, okay, well, maybe I can start making some ebooks out of this. And I started selling that on my website. And it just began to grow into something that was more than just a hobby, but certainly not a business at that stage. Just more like something that was creating a bit of extra income while I was still working full-time and so on. And then it wasn't until about 2012 when finally I was able to resign, and I rocked into work and I said, right, I'm out of here. I'm going to read tarot. Everyone thought I was nuts, including my mum and my dad. But I knew in my head that I was making such a good decision, because at that point in time, I had waited until my business income was at the same level as my corporate income. And I was on a pretty good income. It was a 6-figure salary. And I had managed to build up my business in such a way that it was also generating a similar income. So I could leave feeling quite confident that if things continued the way that they were, that I would be covered. And really from 2012 onwards, like I haven't looked back, like everything has just grown and expanded in some amazing ways that I could not have anticipated. But obviously I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And look, we'll ask you a lot more about that in a moment. But just for those BLG listeners that don't know you as well as your friends and family, what's something outside of work that you could divulge for the BLG audience?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I'm a mum, so I've got 2 kids and a husband, and we've just recently moved up to the Sunshine Coast. And it's funny because I'm looking out the window right now and it's pouring with rain.
Again?
So I don't know where they get that name from. But yeah, like we've just moved here and we're really enjoying this part of Australia. It's just so nice to be back into nature and just chilling out as a family.
Excellent. Great. And yeah, I must admit, when I spoke to my parents and said, I'm leaving a good stable corporate role to become a coach at that time, a coach and advisor, they they said, yes, that's great, Paul, but I know they were talking to all my brother. They called my brother and said, look, can you talk him out of this? This is crazy. I can only imagine what it was like when you said to especially some of because you were at, which company were you at when you left last? Was it PwC or?
No, I was at ANZ at that point,
right.
And we had been through so many restructures. And I remember kind of the attitude at that point in the company was like, you're lucky to have a job here. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm on my terms. And like they had put everyone into roles. So it wasn't that you got to choose where you wanted to be. They had changed, okay, you're doing this job, okay, restructure, now you're doing this job, and you should be really happy that you still have a job. And I think that was really one of the nails in the coffin for me, because I'm not great at being told what to do. I'm not great at sort of being put somewhere that someone else wants me to be. I claim responsibility for my life. And when I made that decision to leave, I felt so strong and empowered that I was taking back my responsibility. And like, it's scary as hell. Like, it's crazy when it's like, you're the one that's responsible for what's going to happen in your life. But it's also a huge opportunity as well, because you get to create your life the way that you want it to be.
So true. And look, I ride with quite a few people from in Melbourne that are still in banking. And, each time I talk to them about how's their job, they just talk about, well, I don't know which year is going to be my year, i.e. year that I don't have a job left. And they often feel quite trapped. They don't really love what they're doing and they don't really know what to go and do. So well done for you for taking that. And, you've talked a little bit about those fears. What were some of the key fears you had when you first stepped out?
Yeah, at that point, I had a Bachelor in Commerce with honours and I had a master's degree in human resources. And I remember thinking at that point, am I just throwing away like 10, 15 years that I've invested in myself and my career to go and do something totally different? But here's the thing, like fast forward now, And I've got a team of 13 people. Now, my HR skills are starting to come back into play. It's quite interesting. And even things like everything that I learned in my commerce degree is coming back into play. Being a management consultant and negotiating deals and presenting to groups, like all of this starts to spiral back. But now it's in a format that's so much more aligned with what I know that I'm meant to do in this lifetime. So I think often, when you're making that decision to leave, it can feel really scary because you feel like you're throwing away what you've built up. But in reality, you've got to trust in that process that in a few years, it's probably going to cycle back in this beautiful, evolved way. And everything that you've learned along your journey will support you in the future steps of your journey as well.
Yeah, look, that's great advice, and I think that's one of the benefits of people that are maybe in corporate listening to this today, that it does take time and you need to be patient, but surround yourself with people like you that have actually gone through that journey. So it does take time, but the rewards are fantastic once you get there. But losing that identity or reforming that identity, as many people say, can be difficult. And talking of help, what sort of help did you get from 2012 onwards to help build the successful business you've got today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So originally the help I was getting was from podcasts and blogs and, reading books. I'm definitely a self-starter. I love learning. Like I'm pretty much all the time I'm reading books about business. So that was certainly in the initial phases. And then I think it was in 2013 or 14. That's when I engaged my first business coach. And that was really a game changer for me because it wasn't so much like, I get to discuss strategy and get advice on it. It was more that my coach was holding space for me to step into this huge possibility that I didn't see for myself. So, for example, I was about to launch an online course and I was like, wouldn't it be great to have 20 people sign up? And she was like, no, Brigit, you need to set your goal at least at like 50 or 100 people. And, in my mind, I was thinking, there's no way that's possible. But what she showed me was like anything's possible. And then we just put in place a series of strategies and actions. And then I blew that goal out of the water. So I found that having that help of a coach and even through having peers, so say in a mastermind group or a support group like you might have on Facebook, again, it's just that there's other people around you who see an even bigger possibility than what you see. And just having that energy around you is what can help you really step into what's kind of next for you.
Excellent. Great. And, that's, I suppose, why I created the Build, Live, Give community was to help, as you suggested. That's excellent. So next we're going to move into the build section. So when people ask you what you do, how do you explain to someone what you do now?
I'm still working on this. And it depends who asks. So sometimes if I go to a big a marketing conference or something, I might explain my business more as online education, online adult education. But basically I'm helping people connect to their intuition and come back into trusting themselves and finding the answers within themselves, and doing that with tarot as a guide. And of course, the way that I do that is through an online community, online courses, books, ebooks, audio programs, and so on. And, I suppose my broader mission with tarot in particular is to bring tarot into the mainstream. I think of yoga and meditation, and you think of how far those have come in the last, say, 30 years. 30 years ago, it'd be kind of weird to do yoga. And now suddenly everywhere, you can find a yoga class anywhere. So I would love to see tarot coming into that space too, where it's just normal that you've got a tarot deck in your handbag and you're pulling out and you're reading cards in the local cafe. That would be fabulous.
Great. And how do you make revenue today?
Yeah, so the main sources for us are through our online courses. I love them because, you dedicate some time and energy to creating the course and putting, everything into those courses. And then the rest is just selling the courses and, reaching out to the people who will be served by watching those courses. So from a sort of passive revenue long term, it's fabulous. The other ways that we generate revenue are through our community, so a membership part of the site, and through ebooks. And we've taken one of our ebooks and we've put this on Amazon. So now it's finally a paperback. And we're only in pre-orders now, but we've already just done 2,500 pre-orders in a week. So it's crazy. I can't wait to properly release it on Amazon. Yeah.
Excellent. And who are your ideal clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I find that our ideal clients are pretty regular, everyday people, because oftentimes you think of tarot, a lot of people think of tarot, or people who read tarot, as kind of a bit old school Renaissance fair style, but we're certainly attracting the folks who are maybe a little bit more younger, more modern, and also wanting to use the tarot for like personal coaching and development versus, predicting the future. So that's really our ideal client.
Okay, excellent. And, since 2012, I'm sure you've made a couple mistakes along the way, as we all do. Is there any one particular mistake that you'd love to highlight, and what was sort of the key lesson out of that?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. There's a whole barrage of mistakes coming to mind, just like little mini ones. It's tricky. I think probably the biggest mistake has actually been in terms of just playing small. So I've learned how to play big now, thankfully. But certainly at the beginning, this whole kind of limiting myself to, I could only attract this many people into my program, or I could only charge this price for my program. I've found that when I start setting limits on myself, I'm not playing at my best. And so what I've learned over time is to just really challenge myself to get out of playing small and get into that playing big, where there are no limits at all.
Yeah, no, that's great advice for the BLG listeners. And also, I certainly resonate with that myself. Around some of the biggest challenges. So what are some of the biggest challenges you face running Biddy Tarot?
Yeah. Well, right now, obviously, we've got 13 team members. So that's awesome. And I love having our team on board. But that's also 13 people we have to pay. And again, I love paying them.
Yes.
But it's a responsibility. And there's a fixed amount every month that I know that we have to earn in the business. And if we don't earn it, then I can't pay my people. Now, of course, we've never been in a position where it's been that close to the wire, but I'm quite conscious of that. I feel responsible for our team in terms of their financial well-being and so on. So I think that's been a bit of a challenge. And then also I've noticed, the bigger reach that we get, the more prone we are to criticism and, all that awful stuff that goes on social media where people think it's okay to completely be nasty and, say awful things that they would never say to your face. But what I've come to realize is that, if you're going to put your voice out there, your whole message out there, it's going to attract a bunch of people. It's going to attract all your dream clients, and then it's also going to start repelling people who will say, oh, your stuff's too expensive, or I don't like your smile, or your spelling is wrong. We get that quite a bit. It's quite funny. So look, those are, they're not awful challenges, but they're just little niggly things along the way as we grow.
Yeah, and look, someone once said to me that you should be really focusing on that 20%. So 80% of people may not be right for you, and you really focus on that 20. And I think for any listeners, BLG listeners, especially that are new in their business, that the sooner you find out that right 20%, the easier it is for everyone. And you'll never please everyone. So really focus on who's that 20%. So great
it's good
advice.
Yep.
For your partner, your husband, obviously is being heavily involved. If he's listening to this podcast when it goes live, what would you like to say to him about the support he's given you?
Well, I think having a partner like Anthony has just been awesome because he has given me the space to be able to grow the business to where it is right now. So I don't think there would be many people who would be so okay with it. So, like he takes care of our kids, he does all the school drop-offs. He, is fine with me traveling for, a few weeks at a time, all of that good stuff. So I think having that kind of support has really enabled me to fully step into all that potential that I see in our business.
Excellent. Great. So a big shout out and thanks to Anthony. So the next section is the live section. So if you could just take me through a typical week for you.
Yeah, interesting. It usually starts on a Monday morning with screaming kids and get your shoes on and eat your breakfast and, getting them out the door.
Yeah.
And then, of course, by 8:30, Anthony's got them out of the door. So, peace again. But look, throughout the week, I'm spending my time doing things like live webinars, podcast recordings. It might be like a launch that we're working on, that I might be planning out what our Facebook ads might be, our email campaigns. Every now and then I might be doing a bit of tarot. It's kind of funny because I run like a tarot business, but a lot of my time and focus is spent on marketing and, really leading the business. And the tarot is integrated into that, but it's not like I spend a lot of my time reading the cards for others because I don't do readings anymore, or even like the teaching component. I'm doing a little bit of that in the webinars, but most of that has been done in terms of the courses that we've put together. So yeah, my typical week is mostly marketing and strategy as well.
Great. And those 13 team members, where are they based in the world?
Oh gosh, so we have quite a few over in the US. We've got myself and my hubby here in Australia. And then we've got things, folks in Portugal, I think Belarus, Ukraine, India, and the Philippines as well. I think that might be everybody.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, and I think that's certainly for me, I've noticed the technology available for businesses like yours now is so superior that you can do that. It's truly a connected world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. And any quick lessons on that for people, managing all of these different people in different locations, different cultures, etc. Any tips for BLG listeners on that? Yeah,
two really important things. So number one, from my management consulting days, I really remember how they had set up the consulting practice, in that you always, you layered up the management levels, in that you'd have an admin assigned to a consultant. So I've applied that with our business or our team structure, so that I only have 3 managers who who report into me, and I deal with them directly. And then I've made sure that they then have admins that work for them. So they're managing the admin directly. And it also means that they can leverage the work, because I don't want to be paying someone, a higher rate and they have no one to give their admin work to. So I always think it's better to have an admin at a lower rate, a manager at a higher rate, and more effective financially, and then also more effective in terms of communicating and not having to manage so many people. Thing number 2 is, this, I think of setting up your team. This is your opportunity to create your dream team. It's not like back in corporate where if you've got a dud team member, you're stuck with them because it's you don't have the permission to fire them, or there's all these laws and what have you. But when it's your team, you get to decide if someone's a fit or not. And we've gone through quite a big process. We've had to let go of a number of people because they were no longer a fit for our organisation. Mm. We either hired them at a point in the business where we're at one stage and they didn't grow at the same rate that we did, or it just, over time we realised it wasn't a fit. So, you could just sit on it and go, oh, I'll just deal with it. But I want to have A players on our team. So I've been very mindful in making those tough decisions that if someone's not, living up to it, then we let them go and we find someone who is a better fit for our business.
Yeah, look, I think that's great advice. And I think one of the things, so I work, for a large corporate that employed over 800,000 people, and they were really good at specific development plans and spending time as a leader. And I see often people that come out of corporate go into small business and they just don't spend enough time on leadership of the team. So I think your advice is really important. It takes time. So yes, you've got to sell. Yes, you've got to do other things in the business, but make sure you're carving out enough time to lead, as you've correctly stated. That's brilliant. So the next section is the give section. So if you've got a cause or a community that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, there's two, actually three. So one is called Opportunity Australia, and this group's really neat because they do microfinance for people in developing countries. So, for example, they might find a community in India and they give them a microloan to maybe establish a water well or set up some shops in their local community. So I really like that one because I'm obviously a strong advocate for entrepreneurialism, and I really want to support that. And another one that we recently sponsored was Destiny Rescue, and they work in a lot of the Asian countries to stop sexual exploitation of kids. And particularly we have team members in the Philippines, and having visited the Philippines in the past, I know that is a problem in some of the different areas of that country. So that was something I wanted to support. And then finally, I love Kiva. I think the model for Kiva is just fabulous, where you can choose a project that you want to support and you can put money to it, and it's a microfinance setup, so you're having repayments over a period of time. I just would love it to be an Australian-based company too. Tax deductions.
Yes,
is that bad?
Yes. No, it's not. But you are the second guest that's got a passion for Kiva. So hopefully there is someone listening out in the BLG community that can do something about setting something up like that for Australian taxpayers. So the last section is the action section, and this is sort of taking all of your experience. I know you've got a wealth of experience from your university days, your management consulting days, and now running a very successful business. So what's your number one personal productivity tip that you'd love to give to BLG listeners?
Yeah, so every month I do something called a CEO day. And on the CEO day, I clear the calendar. In theory, I do not look at my emails at all. I don't do any admin type tasks. The whole day is dedicated to reviewing the business. And so what I do is I spend part of that day looking back on the previous month and thinking, okay, what have I learnt from this month? And what have I achieved in the month? And for me, because I like playing with cards, I draw a few oracle cards to also just help me connect in on a more personal level and a more intuitive level to what have I learnt from the past month inside the business, and what's kind of been the energy flow within the business. And then I start to look at the month ahead and I think, okay, well, what are our priority projects? What are our goals? What's kind of critical to make sure that we achieve these goals in the business? And what extra support do I need to give to the team to make sure that we achieve those goals? And of course, I draw another oracle card and I check in to see, on an energy level, what do I need to be focusing on for the business in that month? And then by the end of that day, I've got a really good idea of where we're focused on for the month. And sometimes I'll be doing a quarterly plan as well. And then I just film a video for our team, about a 10-minute video saying, what we've achieved for the previous month, what's coming up for the next month, and always celebrate a few birthdays and so on, and send that out to the team with our goals as well. So the CEO day for me is great for productivity because It helps me just zoom out of the detail of my business every month, and celebrating what we've achieved and planning for what's coming up.
Yeah, brilliant. Great tips indeed. Next is around apps. So firstly, apps on your phone, normally on your home screen. What are some of your favourite apps that you like to use to help you be productive?
Yeah, it's interesting. I try not to put too many apps on my phone so I can be productive.
Yes.
Catch 22. So mostly, from a work perspective, I've got Slack on my phone, and at least that way I can stay in contact with my team if I'm out and about during the work hours. I also have just my inbox, but I often go through a phase where I think, oh, I've got to delete this inbox off my phone. So I do try to keep a fair amount off my phone, because I get too addicted to it and I get annoyed with it. So I prefer to keep it away. But when I'm on my desktop, we're using Slack as our communication channel with the team, which I really enjoy. We use Trello for our task management. Again, really awesome tool. Can't believe it's free, but don't let that get back to the Trello team, because I don't want them to put a charge on it. Let's see, and we're using things like Zoom for webinars and meetings. We're almost moving away from Skype. I'm finding Skype is a little bit hit and miss lately.
Yeah, look,
Zoom's
I've been hacked twice on Skype, so we've basically gone all across to Zoom now.
Yep, smart. Yeah. And then, when we were, say, running like more sales webinars, we're using Webinar Jam, which is a great tool. Let me think. I'm sure there's more. Dropbox, of course. And actually, we're using Hubstaff too for like payroll, but also just to check in for like logging how many hours you're working each week as well. Because the way that we have set up our team is everyone's paid by the hour versus a fixed rate for the week. And Hubstaff is also great because it tells you how many hours you're doing in each kind of project. And it also does screenshots, which obviously we don't need to use very frequently. But if we do have a concern about productivity in the team, then we do have that available to check up on.
Okay, excellent. All the links to those valuable tools will be in the show notes. So there's a great selection there. And I suppose running that virtual team with 13 people, there's some great apps there. The next one is around a podcast. So what's or a couple of favourite podcasts that you recommend to BLG listeners?
Yeah, I'm really getting into the Being Boss podcast. Do you know that one, Paul?
No, I don't actually.
It's neat. It's run by Emily and Kathleen, and it's designed more for creative entrepreneurs. It's very business focused, but it's also with the creative entrepreneur in mind. So I love listening to that. It feels like you're sitting in with a cup of tea with Emily and Kathleen. So that's been great. Look, when I first got started with online business, Pat Flynn and Smart Passive Income absolutely was my go-to podcast. Perhaps a little less now because he's certainly pitched towards beginners, but I would highly recommend that if you're starting out. And let's see. I mean, I love Amy Porterfield. I think she's just, I like her work attitude. She's just so dedicated and wants to do a really great job, which just really resonates with me. And she's got, good advice around business and so on. So, yeah, I'd say those are probably my favourite ones.
Excellent. And book, I know you said you love to read. What's a book that you'd love to recommend to BLG?
Well, one particular book that really stuck with me was The Big Leap. Do you know that one from Gay Hendricks?
No, I don't.
Fabulous. Okay, get that on your reading list. So The Big Leap is all about things like working in your zone of genius. So finding the work that you're not just great at doing, but it's something that really lights you up. It's I would say in my language, it's your soul work, or it's the work that you've been put here to do. And he also talks a lot about things like hitting your upper limits. So when you're doing like a really great job at something, maybe you're kicking goals and then suddenly you get sick, or suddenly like your computer crashes.
Yes.
And it's almost as if we go through this pattern of like self-sabotage, because we're like, oh, too successful, can't handle it, let's try and undo all of this. So he talks a lot about that in his book. So I really enjoyed that book, and it's really stuck with me.
Yeah, and look, I think culturally for a lot of Australians, that's quite pronounced. I know that difference working with Americans versus Australians is often, that comes in a lot earlier for Australians.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Great, excellent. And you've given some awesome advice during this podcast, but what's some advice you'd like to leave BLG listeners with if they're just started out, or they're through their journey of running their own business? What's some parting words you'd like to give to the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds awfully cliche, but anything is possible, and to really lean into that possibility. So, for example, in 2012, when I left my job, I would not have imagined that Biddy Tarot could be where it's at now. And, financially, in terms of our reach, our impact, and how much we can make a difference, I could never have imagined that. But what I did do when I left my corporate career was I just really just stepped into it and embraced the whole possibility. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, I love sewing and I'd love to have a sewing blog, but who would ever, go visit a sewing blog? Come on, I've just built a huge business out of tarot. So you can build a business out of anything. So I think just lean into that possibility and embrace, opportunity and potential.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think that whole thing about niche is that if you now, because of some of the platforms that you're using with online courses, community membership, all of those things, now it's a lot easier to monetize that passion. So you're giving value, and I think it's much better to really say who you stand for. So, that's the world we're in, and I think you're a shining example of what to do. And how can people find more out about you, Brigit?
Well, head on over to biddytarot.com, and even if you're not into tarot, just check out, how we've got things set up. I'm sure that might be interesting. But if you're a little bit interested in tarot, then we've got a few free resources over there as well that you can check out.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, look, I really loved you sharing your story today. I've known you for a while. I've watched you continually to grow. And I think that whole thing about, challenge to play the big game comes out not just in what you've said today, but also in what you do. So congratulations on your success. We love having you part of the BLG community, and we wish you a lot more success in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brigit. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.